Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make a hearty chicken tortilla soup with two types of grilled cheese, like a ham and cheddar and then a triple cheddar or a triple cheese melt. So we're going to start on our chicken tortilla soup. I'm going to use half of an onion. I don't need the whole one because I'm making kind of a small batch for us. So I'm going to use half my yellow onion, and I'm going to kind of put it in a nice small dice. I have two different types of chicken tortilla recipe soups that I have. This one's a heartier one, a creamier one. And then my other one, if you've ever been to Chewy's and had their chicken tortilla soup, it's very similar to that one, which is more of a brothy based one. So this one's definitely a bit more hearty, but so really they're very different, but both delicious. So today we are making the hearty chicken tortilla soup. So I'm just going to do a nice simple dice on my onions. And then I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil in my Dutch oven. And we're going to saute up the onions with a little bit of minced garlic as well. There we go. Let's put these guys in. And I'm going to add about a teaspoon of minced garlic, which is about 1 to 2 teaspoons fresh cloves. Let's get in here. There we go. And then I'm gonna get a little more garlic on there. I'm gonna give it a little stir to coat all of my onions and my garlic up so they don't burn. There we go. And now we're gonna prep the rest of our vegetables in here. I'm gonna be using 2 big carrots, and you could use baby carrots or pre-cut carrots if you wanted to. But I always buy my vegetables in bulk because we have a really big family. I cook for my 5 kids and my husband as well as my parents. So most days I'm cooking for 9 people, which is a lot larger than the average American family. So bulk is better for us. So I'm just going to use 2 large ones. Peel them. You definitely want to peel them if you're using full carrots because that outer skin, it just doesn't have as nice of a flavor and can get a little chewy in your soups and stews. I'm going to quarter these and then chop them up because I don't want my pieces to be too big. You want them to get nice and tender, and you also don't want to have a huge chunk of carrot in your soup. So I'm quartering them and then I'm chopping them up into a pretty small dice. And we'll quarter these. Give them a nice chop. I'm going to give this a stir. And turn down my heat to about a 6. So a little more than medium. And then we'll finish quartering up our carrots. And we'll toss our carrots in with our onions in just a second as well. There we go. Okay, so now I have my 2 big carrots peeled and diced. We're going to add them with our carrot mixture, or with our onion and garlic. And I'm just going to give that a quick stir. And we're going to let them saute up as well. And then we are also going to be using some celery. I am going to halve my celery. That was in there. And then I will chop it up because I want to have more delicate pieces of celery in this soup. That way you're not, getting a big chunk. With chicken noodle soup, I'll leave them whole. But with this one, I want the flavor of the celery more than the texture of it. So I'm going to give this a nice chop. And I used about, I would say, 5 smaller stalks of it. And we're going to throw these in as well and let them saute. I'm going to give it a good stir. And then I'm going to chop up, it would be about 1 bell pepper. But I have some small sweet peppers, so I'm just going to use that for mine. They're getting at the end of their life, so I wanted to use them up before they go bad. And they'll be perfect for in the soup since they are a little bit wrinkly. They'll just rehydrate up in the soup. And I'm just gonna do a simple dice on these. There we go. And chop these up. I like to use red, yellow, or orange. I typically try to avoid green bell peppers because I think they're a bit more bitter. But you could also, if you like spicy food, you could switch this out for either like a poblano or a jalapeno if you really want it spicy. Those would also work well in here. But I'm a little bit of a spice wimp, so I don't do too much spice. Okay, and now we're gonna put in our chopped peppers. And we're gonna let this saute together while we get our spices. So I'm going to be using, oh, did we get an escapee? Boom. I'm going to be using some Mexican Fiesta, which really just has chili powder, cumin, and some dried tomatoes in it. I'm gonna be using some smoky chipotle better than bouillon, some paprika, and then of course chicken bouillon. But my flavors are gonna really come from these three, which will give it a nice but not overpowering taste. So it won't taste too much like a chili, but it will be more like an enchilada or a fajita. And I'm gonna put in about a teaspoon of my Mexican Fiesta and about a teaspoon of paprika as well. That's gonna give it a nice rich red color to this. There we go. Teaspoon of that. And then let me stir this up. And that way it can let out the oil and will help heat up the spices and make them blend better into our broth in a little bit. I always like to cook my spices into the oil, especially for soups, so that they really can, like, when you add them to heat and fat, it brings out their flavors more. And if you try to add spices to, once you've already added the liquid, all of those will just rise up to the top and they won't really blend into your stew or your soup as well. Okay, you can see they're nicely coated in here. Now I'm going to add in a big heaping spoonful of, if I can get it open, of chicken bouillon. This is gonna give it, we'll add some water in, but this will be in place of chicken broth. And then we're gonna add in a spoonful of my chipotle as well. Get a new spoon for that. And you don't need as much of the chipotle as you do the bouillon because it has a lot of flavor. So I'm gonna add in just like a half. It's gonna be about a teaspoon. This has a lot of flavor if you've never used it before. It has a great flavor to it. It has a little bit of a kick, but I'm pretty much a spice baby, so it doesn't bother me all that much. But it just has a nicer chili flavor to it than like using a powder, like a spice. Okay, we have those simmering up nicely. Beautiful. Give it a good stir. And then I'm gonna add in, we gotta add our tomatoes in, our beans in, and some water, about 2 cups of water. But we're gonna add the tomatoes. I use canned Rotel because they have chili powders in it, but you could also just use a regular diced tomato. If you wanted to use fresh tomatoes, you'd need about 4 or 5 fresh tomatoes. So I'm gonna get my can opener and we're gonna put them in. We're not gonna drain them. We're putting them in with the liquid because that's gonna help season our broth for our chicken tortilla soup. It's more like a stew. It's very hearty. So Gonna put 2 in, or you could use 1 big can of the rotel, which is just tomatoes, onions, and peppers. But they have a nice Mexican flavor to them, which works well with our soup. They give it a good stir so that it can really meld with those spices. There we go. Beautiful. And then we're gonna add in 2 cups of water right now. We might add in a little bit more in a little bit, but we're starting with 2 because it's a very hearty. This one's my other chicken tortilla soup I make is more of a brothy and lighter, but this is a much heartier chicken tortilla soup. It's like a stew. And then we need to do our beans. But with beans, you have to rinse them. You can't just open it up and pour them in there because they're in a really starchy liquid, which will just give a funky texture to our soup and not a lot of flavor. So you always want to make sure you rinse them. I'm using Great Northern beans because they're a lot more delicate than like a kidney bean or a black bean, and they work really well with this soup. They're not overpowering. It is a quick rinse. Shake it out. Shake it. And then we're gonna pour these in. Beautiful. And we're gonna let them simmer for a little bit, and we're gonna work on our grilled cheeses. So we're just gonna really kind of let them simmer and let the flavors melt together. And now we're gonna work on our grilled cheeses. So here is some homemade sourdough bread. We worked on it, we baked it up last night with dinner. And then we're gonna use it now for our grilled cheeses. We have another loaf. I have another loaf right now in the refrigerator proofing, doing the cold proof, so that'll be ready to bake tonight or tomorrow. I always like to have a loaf kind of going, so I always have good sandwich bread for grilled cheeses or melts, because these are, in the winter we eat a lot of grilled cheese and melts because they're just delicious. Let's see, those 2, and I think this slice will go with that one. I kind of cut from both ends with my loaf. That way my slices of bread are about the same.
You got a comment that they love sourdough grilled cheeses because the extra crunch from the sourdough.
Yes, when you're making a grilled cheese, you need to have a hearty bread, and sourdough gives you that nice crisp up and crunch. Or you could always do like a hearty Italian, but for that grilled cheese, you just want that nice chewy texture with it. And sourdough is gut healthy too, so that's an added bonus. So now I'm gonna spread butter on just one side of my slices of bread. These are gonna be the ones that are gonna be face down on the skillet, cooking up. And I do this instead of buttering my skillet because that just tends to burn, and then your grilled cheese doesn't taste as nice. Beautiful. Okay, now we are going to assemble. For some reason, I really want to say, Avengers, assemble, but that's just being weird. Okay, so my husband, who's kind of a plain Jane when it comes to grilled cheeses, is going to just have a plain old ham and cheddar. So I'm going to get his fixed up. When I'm making my grilled cheese, I make sure my cheese doesn't go over the edges of my bread. It's okay if there's like a little bit overage, but if you have it go too much, it will just melt down and then burn onto your skillet. And cheese burns fast, and so you'll more likely burn that before you've got your grilled cheese ready. And then we're just gonna do some good old ham. We've got smoked ham today. I'm not a huge ham person, but my husband loves it, so he gets that. I'm gonna have a triple cheese grilled cheese, which I love. I love the combination of different cheeses together. I think they make it nicer. And then I'm gonna put my ham out. I'm not gonna layer it too thick. If you layer your meat too thick on a grilled cheese, your cheese will never melt. Because it takes so long for it to warm up. before you can get the cheese melting. You'll burn your bread. And then we're gonna add the top slice. So I'm just gonna break it off so we don't have some overage. And there we go. It's fine if the ham goes over because that's not gonna melt and burn. There we go. Put that in there. So we have that one. And then now for mine, I'm using Colby Jack, Hearty, and some cheddar. I also really love Gouda, so that's also one of them that I'll throw in for a good grilled cheese too. But I do find cheddar is just a great, a staple for it if you're just doing plain ones. And this is my personal choice, I absolutely detest American cheese. I think it's because I never grew up with it. My mother is from Sweden and my father was, his mother was Norwegian and his father was British. So we have a lot of European influences in the food that I had growing up. And American cheese was just never in our household. And I think that's why I absolutely hate it. Oh, looks like my little one's stirring right now. He just went down for a nap. So hopefully he'll fall back to sleep. There we go. So I've got Hearty, Colby Jack, and cheddar on mine. And then I'm gonna put my top layer on, and then I'm gonna turn my skillet to about a 8. We'll have it cook up, and then we will turn down the heat. And remember, when I do my grilled cheese, I cook them on each side twice. So the first one is really warming up the bread, while the second one is going to be for the thing. Mr. Jack is mad right now, but he just went down like 20 minutes ago, so he needs to fall back asleep or he'll be cranky. Okay, let's prep up the rest for our chicken tortilla soup. We have it, you can see it's starting to simmer there. So we need to add in we're gonna add in some rotisserie chicken. I buy mine in bulk from Costco, but you could also just, if you have leftover chicken, you could chop that up. Or you could boil up some thighs, and those work really well in soups, and use that, and then you could use the broth for it. Okay, I find that if you notice, sometimes you get huge chunks of chicken breast from Costco, so I always go through and I'm just gonna give it a quick chop over, all of it so my pieces aren't super huge, just like this, and there we go. And then we're going to add this to our stew that's starting to simmer. And it can start picking up the flavors and give it a nice stir. And these will help. I don't put it in right away. I like the vegetables to cook a little bit because sometimes when you use pre-shredded chicken, if you put it in there, it can fall apart. So I kind of let the vegetables simmer up for a good 5 or so, 10 minutes before I add my chicken in, just so it doesn't start to fall apart. And then we're gonna add in some corn. And you don't need too much. I just love corn in Mexican food, so I always add some. I'm gonna add probably like a half a cup. You don't need too much because we're not making a huge pot today. And then we're gonna give it a nice stir. Beautiful. And then I'm gonna stir, this has my bouillons on it. I'm gonna stir that off, and then I'm gonna give it a good taste to see if we need to add any more spices or salt to our stew. Perfect. See, I don't add in extra salt because there is salt in the bouillon and in this, so you don't need to add extra. It seasons it, but it seasons it more than if you were to just use plain chicken broth. There we go, give it a stir. Now we're gonna prep some cilantro, and we'll chop that up. And then when I'm making it, I like to add, squeeze the lime juice in and add some fresh avocado to kind of dress it up, and sprinkle a little bit of cilantro. So some of this cilantro we're gonna have go on top of, or in the soup already, and then some we're gonna put in afterwards as a garnish, but as the other output. Because when you cook up cilantro, it kind of changes its flavor from when it's fresh. In fact, if we didn't know this, cilantro, when it is dried, it goes by a completely different name. It goes by coriander. So we're gonna give this a nice chop. And it sounds like Mr. Jack has fallen back asleep, which is good. He seems to always wake up like 20 to 30 minutes into his nap. And I just think it's because he has some big windows in his room. And I think the sun shifts right around this time. There we go. So I'm gonna put about half of my cilantro in. We're gonna stir it, and then let's go check on the grilled cheese. I can hear them crackling, which I think means they're ready for their first turn. Where is it? A fish spatula is great for turning grilled cheese because it's very long and thin and arched. And am I also using this skillet, which is a non-stick skillet with a low edge, which is easier for getting under. So don't freak out. This is my first color of it. I'm gonna be cooking each side one more time. This is just to warm it up so that the cheeses melt and the middle gets nice and warm. Okay, let's give our stew a nice stir. And then I'm gonna turn down my temperature just a little bit. Okay. The next part of the soup that we're going to do is we'll prep that thing. We're gonna also add some sour cream and some cheese to our soup in a little bit, but I do that at the very end. You don't wanna add your dairy if you're adding it to a soup too soon, because with heat, it can curdle. So we'll add that towards the very end once we've turned it off direct heat. I'm gonna turn my things. I'm hearing it sizzle over there nicely. Okay, let's chop up our lime, because I like to add some fresh lime and squeeze it over our chicken tortilla soup. The acidity of it just pairs really nicely with the Mexican flavors. Kind of brings out them. And then we'll have our avocado. My trick with avocados is I let them start to ripen on like in my fruit bowl, and then once they get kind of soft to touch, I pop them in my refrigerator, because avocados can go bad faster than faster than you can say the word avocado. They just pop off bad. And then I think we're gonna be ready for our flip on our, got one peeled off. Let's get these flipped. Where's my spatula? Okay, beautiful. Okay, and now we're finishing them up. I'm gonna turn it down, and we're gonna be doing it for the color now. Okay, let's peel off our avocado skin. I always find just peeling off is a little bit easier to chop them up and scooping them out, and then, there we go. And we've got a little bruise. I do hate how delicate avocados are. They bruise up easily. I was buying them at the store, and like the bagger dropped them, and I was like, oh, those are all ruined now. It's once you drop them, it's just like when you drop an apple, they're completely ruined. Here we go. We're gonna just chop them up. We're gonna put these on at the end. We'll just put them in our bowl with our chicken tortilla soup. But now it is time to kind of finish it off. So I'm gonna turn my heat down really low, and we're going to add in some sour cream. We're gonna add about a half a cup of sour cream, which is gonna be the rest of this, because I don't have much of that, and then I have another thing. But I wanna use up this. This has about a fourth of a cup in it, so we're gonna use half a cup of sour cream. And this is just going to give it a creamier texture and also help mild out some of those spices. Let's see if this is open. It's not open yet. And then I'm just gonna give it a squeeze in there. So it's about a half a cup. If you wanted your soup to be about a little bit thicker, you could add a little bit of flour to your sour cream and then stir it in, and that would help it thicken up. But I like my soups a little bit more brothy. So I am just gonna leave it with the sour cream, giving it that nice creaminess, but not without thickening. But if you are a person who's a lover of like thicker stews, just add like 2 tablespoons or so of flour to your sour cream, mix it up really good, and then pop it in here, and then that will just thicken up. So we've got our sour cream in, and then we're gonna add in about a cup of cheese. But I'm gonna go check on my grilled cheeses over here, see if they're ready for, oh, perfect. Now we've got that nice golden crispy crust. This side needs a little bit more before we do it, before we flip this one. So let's add in our cup, which is really like a really big handful of cheddar cheese. And then we're gonna stir this up. And this is also gonna make a little bit thicker broth, but it's gonna give you a really nice, like, cheesy boost to it, which I find is like really delicious with chicken tortilla soup. And you know, they always call it chicken tortilla soup, and you're supposed to put tortilla like chips in it. I never do. I always just eat it with a grilled cheese instead. But traditionally you would throw in some tortilla chips if you wanted to, like when you're garnishing it at the end, to give it that crunch.
And when you have a second, do you want to grab me one of those delicious muffins you made yesterday?
Oh yes, I'll grab that for you.
One of those as well.
Yes.
And you can explain that one as well.
Perfect. Now we're gonna golden up. These are almost done. You can see the cheese is melting. So yesterday, if you were with us during lunchtime, we made sourdough discard streusel muffins, and these have been the hit. I made a dozen, and I've got 3 left. So the kids have loved them. My little ones actually had them with breakfast today with yogurt and some sausages, but they are absolutely delicious. We layered the streusel in there, but it's a great way to use your sourdough discard. I'll give that to my husband. He can have it as a special treat. Apparently filming is hard work. Okay, let's see how these, oh perfect. These are lovely. Okay, I'm gonna turn my skillet off, and then I'm gonna get a bowl, get ready to plate up. And I need a spoon. Okay, here, I'm gonna move, well, we'll do the soup first, and that's way it's easier to dress up. Let me get a ladle. So this one, I always dress it up with my avocado, lime juice, and fresh cilantro because it just adds a nice vibrancy to a heartier soup. And then I want a nice scoop of the broth. And then I will add my avocado chunks, a little bit of cilantro, and then I'm gonna squeeze in some fresh lime juice. And then I like to sprinkle it with just a little bit of cheddar cheese on the top because it kind of melts in there nicely with the stew. You could also add a dollop of sour cream if you wanted. Okay.
So you got a question? What's the difference between hearty soup and regular soup?
Hearty soup is, I consider, more of like a stew, so kind of a thicker broth. And then regular soup is more of a brothy, thinner base. So that's what I differentiate between. So like this is, I would say, my hearty chicken tortilla soup, and my other one that I have is a lot more, like it has a very delicate broth and doesn't have any tomatoes in it really, just a couple of cut up fresh tomatoes. Let me cut this grilled cheese in half. And this is mine. We've got the lovely, oh, there you go. Look at that cheesy pull. Perfect. For my triple cheddar, or triple cheese. Delicious. Well, guys, thank you for joining us here today. We made some different grilled cheeses and our hearty chicken tortilla soup. And I think it was good. But don't forget to like and subscribe. We also love your feedback or comments. Feel free to send us some recipe suggestions if you want. We have somebody requested some chicken and dumplings, so I'll be getting stuff from the store to make that next week for our kids and family. But again, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe.